We all have areas in our life that hold us back from reaching our full potential. That's why I was so honored that I got to speak with Lisa today about the 6 capacities and how to recognize them. But first, here's a little bit more about our guest. Lisa Fabrega is a leadership coach who helps ambitious women expand their capacity to handle more growth, wealth, and success. For more than 10 years, she has helped entrepreneurs, corporate executives, Academy Award nominees, and Nobel Prize organization candidates break through boundaries that have been holding them back from their next level. Her signature approach enables clients to reach their highest levels of success and impact. Lisa has addressed thousands of people, both on stage as a keynote speaker, as well as appearing in many podcasts. She has also been featured on CNN, Yahoo News, and the Huffington Post. She splits her time between Florida and California with her 2 adorable rescue dogs, Luna and Sadie.
Welcome to Fox Talks Business Podcast with your host, Tanya Fox. Tanya has been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, owning retail, service, and franchise. She holds no punches and is never afraid to talk about the nitty-gritty. Together, you'll explore the good, the bad, and the motivational of business life, turning obstacles into opportunities and failures into successes. So grab your favorite drink and let's have some fun. Here's your host, speaker, crafter, and collaborator, Tanya Fox.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Lisa.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your background, sort of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, when I first started this business over a decade ago now, I didn't know anything about having your own business. I didn't know anything about coaching. I was an actor in New York City with a full-time job in a financial firm that was being used to pay my bills. And I kept getting promoted at that job. And so every time I tried to leave to go on an audition, they would start having more issues with it as I kept getting promoted. And I realized I was going to have to do something different because at one point I was going to get fired or I was going to have to quit. And so at that time, I ran into a friend of mine who was also an actor at that time on the street in New York City. And she started telling me that she was making very good money with her own business as a coach, and that she didn't need to have her day job anymore and could have that flexibility to go on her auditions. So I thought, well, yeah, let me try that. And I thought if she can do it, I should be able to do it too. And it was a terrifying leap. At that time, I invested in coaching school. That was like $8,000. At the time, $8,000 for me was like $50,000.
Yeah.
I was just like barely making ends meet at that time. And I took out a loan. I invested in coaching school. And about 6 months into coaching school, we were kind of allowed to start taking clients. And I went straight for it because I needed to make money. And yeah, I started first as a health coach, but then very quickly I noticed that my clients were not ever talking to me about food. And most of them were pretty successful women who either had pretty high level careers in corporations, or they were entrepreneurs, or, celebrities, or working, they were ambitious women,
Right.
high achieving. And we were having all these interesting conversations about things that were blocking them and how they see themselves and how they were hitting plateaus. And I started to realize I'm not a health coach. Like, that's not what I'm good at. And I started noticing, as we do this over time, we start to notice patterns. And that gives us information about what we're actually good at and where our zone of genius is. And the pattern I noticed the most is that a lot of these people that were coming to work with me, these high achievers, they would say, it just has gotten to a point that things that used to work for me aren't working for me anymore. And I've spent all this money, like buying this funnel blueprint and blah, 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 and like trying all these Facebook ad strategies or trying these strategies that are acceptable in my field. And it's not working for me anymore. I need something more. And that's when I realized that what I had been doing all that time, because when they would come to work with me, things would finally shift for them. And in some cases, they had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to resolve some of these plateaus they had hit. And I realized, oh, I'm actually helping them expand their capacity to receive, hold, and handle what they want at the next level. Because if you don't believe that you can receive, hold, and handle it, and you don't have that capacity, it can come to you and you're going to find a million little ways to sabotage it, to push it away, to say no to it. And then you're wondering why you're not growing anymore, why things aren't working like they used to. And so that's how I got to doing the work that I do now, which is that I help leaders expand their capacity so they can go to their next level.
And I think that that's such a key thing, because I think we always, quite often entrepreneurs get it in their mind that they're like, I just want to be successful, and then that's it, and then that's where I get to stop. And we don't realize that those blocks keep happening. So let's talk a little bit more about these 6 things that you're teaching on and that you've noticed.
Yeah. So in my work over the last 10 years with thousands of people, again, patterns, you notice patterns. And I've noticed that there are 6 areas where people who want to go to their next level, where it be the next level of revenue or visibility or impact, these are the areas that we tend to struggle in the most. And I feel that we have to sort of do like a self-assessment of where we stand so we know what's actually blocking us. Because if
Right.
it's not your ad strategy, if it's not your funnel, if it's not your networking strategy, it's something else. And so the first capacity is what I call money capacity. And I define money capacity as your ability to earn, save, and invest larger and larger amounts of money every year. So if you're not doing that every year, something's up with your money capacity. And it could be a whole host of things. I've worked with, so I would ask you, if you're listening to this, score yourself. How would you score yourself on a level of 1 to 10 on your ability to earn, save, and invest larger and larger amounts of money every year? That'll give you some information. And it could be anything. I've had clients who couldn't break past 200,000. And they're like, I don't understand. I've been trying for 3 years and I can't get past 200,000 in my revenue. Turns out that when we worked together, we discovered that this particular client, her father had left her mom when the mom got promoted to a job that earned 200,000 because he was threatened that she was making more money than him. And so I'm
Right.
like, well, of course you're not going to want to earn more than 200,000, because in your mind, there's a negative thing associated with that. And she wasn't even aware of that. And when we did some of that money capacity work to clear that out, she broke past that revenue within a couple of months, and she didn't have to deal with that issue again. The next capacity that I would ask you to score yourself on is visibility capacity. This is a huge one. This is the biggest one that everybody always responds to, and that's allowing all of you to be fully seen in your work. A lot of us think that, well, in my field, a leader needs to appear this way, and I can't ever cuss, and I can never say this, and these topics are taboo, but we may really want to talk about those things, or we may know a lot about those things, and we hold back these parts of ourselves. And I have found that the most lucrative pieces of our personality are the ones that we tend to hide, because we think we have to look like everybody else. Whereas if you show those pieces, it really makes you stand out. It brings your unique perspective to your work, and it makes people take notice. A great example is a client of mine had a business coaching business for many years. It was making about $500,000 a year, not bad. And she was hiding that she was incredibly intuitive and that she used this in her amazing results that she would get her clients. And when she worked with me on that visibility capacity, we realized we got to let this out. Like, you got to come out. You got to tell your audience that you do this.
Right.
And she had an event. This was the coolest thing. She had an event that she would just struggle to get 80 people in every year. When she told people that she was an intuitive and she added this into her event, she had like I think it was like 250 people that signed up for this event, and it was easy. She barely had.
Wow.
So she more than doubled her numbers for that event because she brought this part of her out. So where would you rate yourself in your visibility capacity? What are you hiding that needs to be shown?
And I
Then,
think that that's so true, because I think there's so many people that, are trying to go with the status quo, or are too scared to say, I use this sort of maybe unorthodox method, or I think about it differently, or whatever. I really love that piece.
I completely agree. I'm telling you, the thing that you are hiding is your moneymaker.
Yeah.
Always. Then we have purpose capacity. This one came about because I was having such a large number of people coming to me that it had some coach tell them that they should have a business about this because that makes money. But they'd never stop to go, is this aligned with my purpose and what I actually want to do? So I remember I had a client who was a Oscar nominee, like an amazing woman. And she had been told by some business coach to have some business that was so off, like from her values and who she is as a person. But, you know, being a good student, she did what the coach told her to do.
Right.
And she was like, I want to quit my business. I hate it. I'm so uninspired by this. It's not me. I feel like I feel trapped. I feel demotivated. And it's because purpose capacity is that your inside matches your outside, that those two are aligned, and that you're not just building some massive successful business that you hate because it's not you. And so we ended up, I said, well, let's do some capacity work and find out what actually feels aligned for you. And she did. She actually that year switched her business into what felt aligned, what was, again, very unique to her. And she started signing like clients who were paying her like $25,000 for 6 months of work, and became a very high level coach. And again, an amazing result as a result of working on that capacity. And then one of the most important ones is also very popular, but people don't call it this, so they don't realize that this is an issue, but it's a big issue, is what I call embodiment capacity. And embodiment capacity is the blend of your emotional, your physical, your mental, and your spiritual capacity. So, for example, if you get a troll on your page that says something horrible, or you get a criticism, or you're about to you're in the middle of a launch and something goes terribly wrong and you're freaking out. Like, do you freak out to the point where your whole team wants to quit and you feel like you're having heart palpitations? Because I've met a lot of people who have that experience and it feels like their whole life rides on this launch. That's not a sustainable way. Like, you can't, the stress is going to kill you. You cannot run your business long-term with that sort of emotional cycle during a launch. If you get thrown off for 2 weeks by a mean comment, and so much so that it causes you to hide or shrink or not want to keep showing up, that's an embodiment capacity issue. If you're afraid of what people are going to think of you and what you have to say, or if people in your town are going to judge you, that's an embodiment capacity issue. And we don't realize how subconsciously that fear, those ways that we allow these external factors to throw us off our center, that can really slow down your growth in your business and as a human. It is massive, and it's like the last place people look. Everybody thinks that you just slap a strategy on it, and you can't. Strategy cannot help with building emotional resilience in your business.
Do you find that this shows up a lot too? Because I see a lot of people who say, I had a negative comment, I'm trying to talk to with that person, and it almost becomes like, I don't really want to say a passion, but it almost becomes like a plight of theirs to try to turn people who have no interest in what they're doing into fans. And, that sort of sets them on that, on this path of the embodiment, because they're not focusing on those that are already invested, that already love. They're trying to constantly convert.
I love that you brought this up, because I was literally posting something about this on Instagram, where I feel that a lot of people go wrong in their marketing because their marketing is basically focused on convincing people who are not actual buyers.
Right.
And so you're like, your whole message is based on like working so hard to convince somebody that, and there's all these other people that if you didn't even focus on like, what if this person has this objection, and you just focus on the people who are ready to buy, the way your marketing would shift, the things you're saying in your marketing would shift. So I completely agree. That's a huge thing. And then having that confidence to be like, I'm not going to try to convince you. I'm going to focus on the people who are like easily ready to buy and easily ready to join me on this journey. That requires some emotional fortitude, because we feel like we're told that we have to do it this way, or we have to address all the objections. But there are some people, they're never going to buy things from you and don't really care, like you said.
Yeah.
And I don't know, these days, I don't even think about those people. I'm just so focused on the people who want my help. And if I get a negative comment or whatever, okay, you're not even the person who would buy a product from me. So why would I care about what you have to think?
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so then I'd say score yourself on that. How's your embodiment capacity? And then we have structural capacity, which I think they're all important, but this one is so tricky for people. Structural capacity is the foundations upon which your life and your work are built. So what I usually say is, what are the foundations? It could be anything like the way you manage your schedule. It could be your team. It could be the people that you have in your life who support what you're doing and want you to reach higher. It could be the cleaning lady that you have at home, right? It could be the babysitter for your kids. Like, those are all important foundational structural aspects that basically lift you up to go to your next level. So what I usually have my clients do when they're assessing their structural capacity is to ask themselves, and I want you to ask yourself if you're listening, is the structures that I have right now in life, at work, are they actually the strong foundation and lift up that I need to go to my next level? You might have the structures that got you to where you are, and those work for where you are. But where you want to go, you might have to change some of those foundations and structures up a little bit. For example, I had a cleaning lady, I still have her, I love her to death. And she was like, well, do you want me to do your laundry too? Because I was doing my own laundry and I am so busy. I mean, I don't even know how I thought it was okay to just keep doing my laundry. And here
But I
she is
think we
offering.
convince ourselves, right? Like these basic sort of skills we should be able to do with everything else in our life, right?
Right. And she's like offering to do it for me because she's like, she sees how overwhelmed. She's like, I can do it. I don't mind. Like, we'll just add an extra hour. I'm like, so finally I'm like, okay. And she's like, great. So she's doing it every week. But then I'm like, no. Don't put the clothes away. I'll put them away. And she's looking at me like, what? I can easily put the clothes. So then it's like all those little things that we do that are just draining our time when somebody's happy to do it. When maybe you need to tell your partner, like, you know what, you got to watch the kids for 2 hours on Thursdays because I got to get this stuff done in my business. And that's a non-negotiable for me. So where are the ways that we sort of undermine the structures that we need to get us to where we want to go? The team I have now may not be the team that I need. I had 2 years ago, I let almost everybody on my team go, and it was all amicable. But I realized they were like at the highest level they could serve. They were amazing. I love them. But I was going somewhere that they weren't interested in going. And so I had to get new people, right? So score yourself. What are your structures and foundations like? Do you have the foundations you need to go to the next level? And if not, what do you need to do to get it there? And the final capacity that you got to score yourself on, which is also huge, is your boundary capacity. Now, we tend to think of boundaries as these sort of walls that we put up to keep things out. But I think, yes, they can be that. And I think boundaries do indicate what we are and aren't available for, which is very important to communicate. But boundaries also, because we're communicating what we're not available, they also communicate what we want more of,
Right.
what we're available for more of. And so to me, I look at boundaries as requests that we make to the universe about what we really want. And another thing that we miss is self-boundaries. So we can put boundaries with other people, but do I allow myself to go down a 2-hour freak out and like mental loop about something? That's a boundary I need to set with myself. And then again, if you're listening and you're scoring yourself on these capacities, you've got to ask yourself, the boundaries that I have now, are they adequate for where I want to go? And if not, if I were to bring my future self with the next level, who's already at the next level, into the present moment, what boundaries would she or he say I need to have in order to be there? Like, what is that level of me? What are their boundaries at that level? And so that's a boundary capacity thing. Boundaries is a huge, like, emotional labor is something I talk a lot about, because there's all these hidden forms of emotional labor that we do with clients, with our team, with our loved ones. And I think we have to be masters of our energy when we have really big goals. And everybody's talking about money and time, But after after money is not an issue and you're like making money and you know how to make money, after time, like, okay, time's important, but now I've kind of got a thing down with my time. The next currency that is so important, that I think is the most important, is your energy. So if you don't have good boundaries set up in your contracts and your expectations for your team, then you're going to be getting all these little like emotional labor leaks pulled out of you on a daily basis. And while you may think, oh, it's just a tiny little leak, tiny little leaks times 20 is a waterfall of
Yeah.
energy being wasted. And so boundaries are also extremely important. So those are the 6 areas that I notice that people tend to struggle in the most when they're having a plateau or things aren't working for them anymore. And so it's important to know where you stand in those areas.
And I love what you said about the boundary one, because I think that's so true. And I hear, it's so common these days that people are like, I want to work a 4-day work week. And then you look at their schedule and I'm like, you're open 6 days a week. And they're like, I know, but I'm going to get there. And I'm like, just get there now. Like,
Right.
just have your 4 days now. Like, you'd be surprised what but we get, I think it goes back to what you were, what we had talked about in one of the other capacities, is that we worry, right? We get paranoid about, especially our schedule. And I know I was very guilty of this, of going, well, what if somebody doesn't live in the same time zone? Or I want to give a lot of flexibility for people. But I wasn't being true. Like you had said, I wasn't being true to my self boundaries and going, these are the times I want to set that I'm available to do this particular task. And if somebody can fit into that, great. And if they can't, well, that's okay too. But I need to keep that to myself. And I think that that's such a huge one. So I'm so grateful that you brought that one up. It's definitely a good reminder for me, but I think it's a good eye opener for a lot of people.
I think we get scared that people are going to get mad or we're going to lose income. But I have to say that I have had situations where I had clients that were incredibly disrespectful of boundaries, and I had to fire them because, like you said, this is the boundary. Like, you either like it or you don't, but I'm not going to, if I start bending my boundary for you, then I'm bending it for everybody else. And it wasn't even in the contract what this client wanted. And I did end up firing her. And what was amazing, and every time I've had to do this, which thankfully is few times, but I've had to, I'm 10 years in business, you had to do some of these things a few times. And every single time I have fired a person or said no, and someone got really mad and left or like withdrew their money or whatever, always someone else comes in and replaces that income. Always, always. That particular person, I fired her. And then I was a little worried because I'm like, that money's gone. And literally 2 weeks later, a new client that was paying the same price that she was paying came in. And what I loved, my favorite part, is that when she got on the phone with me, she said, and she saw my contract, and the previous client had been like, oh God, your boundaries are so rigid. Your contract is so rigid, blah, 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 and like left. The new one came in and said, I have to tell you that you inspired me so much. She was like, your contract is so beautifully boundaried, and it made me realize how I need to do the same thing. And I was laughing because I was like, the very thing that was criticized is the very thing that drew the new client into me and that made her feel good about investing in me. So we are always worried that people are going to get mad at us, but there's always like a compensation for setting a healthy boundary that takes care of that.
I think that that's so true, because I know I've done that in my life too. And I realized I'm training my clients on how to treat me. So if I'm answering a text message or I'm answering an email at 10 o'clock at night, I'm pretty much saying, it's okay to text me at any time. I'm available 24/7. And I realized I have to stop myself and go, no, I'm not on the clock. I will not, I'll answer them. And I think that email is a hard thing, because people think I need to answer right away. And I'm thinking, well, they're emailing you, so it's okay to answer when you can answer. Like, if it's an emergency, usually people won't email and go, hey, my house is on fire. Could you call the fire department when you get a chance? Right? They'll usually call.
Right. I have clients who text me because in my one-on-one, my VIP level, my one-on-one, you can text me. And my contract is very clear. It says, I'm not obligated to respond to you right away. There's no time frame in which I have to respond to you. And I usually get back to my clients pretty quickly, but it's really nice to have that in there because it sets the expectations from the beginning that like, I'm not at your beck and call, you know? I mean, if you
Yeah.
want to pay me $1 million, I might be at your beck and call. Even then I wouldn't be at your beck and call, but it, you know, it's nice to, when you have it set, then you can kind of relax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now with, with these, 6 key things, I know that there's still some listeners who are like, I get it and I hear it, but I'm still stuck on some of the answers or how to go forward. What would be the best way for them to contact you to see if maybe they could work with you, if it would be a good fit?
Yeah. So actually on my website, if you go to www.lisafabrega.com, right on that website, if you go and enter your email address for the newsletter, you're going to get a whole series of free videos, which I call capacity conversations. And it basically walks you through all the 6 capacities, explains them in more detail, and it actually helps you identify if you actually have an issue in that area. And then it starts to give you suggestions for things you can do. Also, if you want to work more deeply on a capacity, I have several programs. They're also on my website that you can apply for. But the videos themselves are so amazing. I call it capacity flicks because it's like doing a binge of capacity videos.
I love that.
Yeah, and you can totally binge on them, and they're great. People love those videos. We get emails all the time about how much clarity they brought, and that's totally free if you just sign up at the top part of the the little newsletter. Sign up at the top part of my website.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I got so much out of this and so many new tips, but also some things that just, sometimes we need that re-register in our head of going, yeah, especially the boundary one. The boundary one is
Yeah.
one I know I constantly have to reassess and work on and go, am I doing this or am I slipping back into old patterns again?
Yeah, that's one that we always have to keep evolving for sure.
Oftentimes, being an entrepreneur means we get into this mindset that we don't know how to ask for help, sometimes because we feel like we should have all of the answers. And as we're sitting there struggling, trying to figure out why we can't reach our next goal or why we can't overcome this one obstacle, I think this is where Lisa's talk about the 6 capacities is so important. To open your mind to think about some things maybe you haven't thought about, but also to remind you of those things that you're like, you know what? I do need to start setting boundaries for this. So I really hope that you take time to head to her website and check out all of the amazing videos that she has. And take some time for you this week, because we all need that moment where we work on ourselves so that our business can grow. And learning how to get past those boundaries, to get past those things that are stopping us is so important. And never be afraid to ask for help. I always believe those that ask for help are stronger than those who don't. And no matter what you're doing today, whether you're fighting to get through a capacity or whether you're just taking some time for yourself, always make sure that no matter what you're doing, you find a way to have fun. Because hey, as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?